Sure. Okay. Today we are speaking with Juan Reyes, the one and only. He's a really good friend. He's been a great mentor to me these last few years. Great introduction to the world of ALS, the world outside of our home during our journey anyway. I'm really grateful that he could be here with us today, and I would love to share him with all of you as well. So, Juan, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you will.
Well, thank you, Ellen, for the warm introduction. As you alluded, in the ALS community, I am known as the one and only. And that's a moniker that started with a Walk to Defeat ALS team name. And it just evolved from there. I am a 21-year veteran of the Air Force, in which I was a medic for the last 12 years. In the Air Force, I functioned similar to a physician assistant, where I would deploy and see patients independently, as long as I could reach back to a licensed physician. I pretty much did everything
Mhm.
that a physician would do for our active duty troops. After retiring from the Air Force, I was a defense contractor working for the Air Force in disaster response management. When the contract finished, I was managing, along with a fellow Air Force retired medic, on 13 military medical facilities and their capabilities to respond to what they call CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and environmental disasters. And it was a great experience, but then the contract ended and I transitioned to being a stay-at-home dad, which was very opportune because during that time, my wife Meg and I and our only biological son Nathan decided to pursue adopting to add to our family. And so fast forward to uh, May of 2012, and we adopted three children from the state. They were siblings from the same birth parents. Unfortunately, they experienced a childhood that no one should ever be uh, able to experience. But they are older now and they are settled and successful and happy overall.
It's good.
As happy as teenagers can be nowadays. And
Mhm.
you all know what that's like.
I absolutely do.
But we went from a family of three to a family of six overnight. And it's been an incredible blessing. Unfortunately, 2 years later, after the adoption, I was diagnosed with ALS,
Mhm.
and I've been involved with advocacy since May of 2016.
You skipped
was
over your experience with the Salvation Army, your position with them.
uh, thank you for reminding me. Uh, After uh, we adopted the kid, I took a position as the executive director for the Salvation Army in the San Antonio area, which was an incredible experience being able to lead a team of individuals whose sole purpose was to help the less fortunate. I became, I often say that I earned my master's in nonprofit with the experience there because I had never been in the nonprofit arena. And it was a huge learning experience, but I was blessed to have a great team, great leadership, and we revived the Salvation Army in San Antonio because it had been challenged with some fiscal difficulties until I was proud of the work that we accomplished while I was there. Unfortunately,
I would go so far to say not only that service there, not only your service in the military, but your entire life has been a life of service to others.
pretty much, and I think I'm blessed in
Yeah.
the sense that as the oldest sibling of five children, my entire life has been pretty much in the service of others. I had to help my parents rear four siblings, all of which are successful in their own right.
There's so many
And I'm
things that
blessed.
all of us have to look up to you for. So thank you.
Thank,
Thank you for your service.
thank you. It's humbling to receive um, positive reinforcement,
Mhm.
but it's also very life affirming.
Mhm.
And so that's what really drives my efforts. As a veteran, I received adequate resources and support from the VA.
Mhm.
It is the struggle of families that don't have those resources that drives me and Meg to help others as much as we can.
Yeah, I understand that.
Um, in May of 2016, when I was invited to attend the conference in Washington, D.C. for advocacy of ALS, I met individuals that inspired me and forced me, in a sense, to break through my fear
Mhm.
of engaging and sharing my story because I felt that if they could, given the advanced stage of ALS that they were in, why the hell could I not? And why shouldn't I?
Mhm.
And so I was compelled to begin advocacy work at that time. And not having been a writer, I took the challenge of posting on Facebook every day in the month of May because it's ALS Awareness Month. And so I took a chance. I started sharing honestly and vulnerably my experience and my thoughts on living with ALS. And it was eye-opening to hear the responses and the comments being shared by individuals that read what I was posting. And I discovered that the community was hungry for
Addiction.
a glimpse, a
Yeah.
glimpse behind the veil
Mhm.
of ALS.
I mean, everybody hides behind their own experiences, and when you get together in the community and realize that we all share, if not the same, very similar experiences and feelings and challenges, you feel much less alone and much more inspired to help everybody that you can, whether you're pulling somebody up behind you or someone else is helping you. It's a great place to be.
And what you discover is that the community embraces you with your flaws
As you are.
as you are,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
And if you look back at my writing when I started to what it is now, it has evolved greatly. And that's because I've collaborated and shared with other individuals in the community that have the same passion
Mhm.
to teach and illustrate the world that ALS is not a death sentence. I like to remind folks that it literally a slap on the head, reminding us to live and live fully. And for me, it awakened the desire to share my thoughts. And what I do with my writing is like many other authors. I take little snippets of life and I make notes of interesting observation in addition to comments and concerns from the community. And from those, I develop messages and stories that can share and illustrate
Mhm.
that thought or that emotion or fear, whatever it may be. And I use humor at times, other times I use dark and deep thoughts,
Mhm.
fears, emotions, um, dark
I will
humor.
say, I would say underneath all of that is unconditional love for the people in this community. It's something that I've always experienced, not just with you, but in the community itself. We all come together in, this brotherhood almost that is unbreakable. That everybody is accepted unconditionally, exactly where they are, exactly how they are. Um, there's no expectations. None of it is transactional, which is very different from the rest of the world. It is just pure unconditional love. So that's one reason I'm so grateful for you and everybody here that I've met.
It is, in essence, a sharing of each individual's soul and heart and mind,
Hmm.
and we share them unconditionally
Hmm.
because in the end, ALS strips not just the individual living with it, but the entire family and support network
Mhm.
abuse, preconceptions, and that lays bare our souls and strips away every facade
Mhm.
that we create for ourselves.
Mhm.
In the end, all that is left is our spirit,
Mhm.
our mind, and the love that we share for each
100%.
other.
100%. Too many times, looking back in my previous family deaths, you're always left with questions about that person. Who are they really? And then you go digging through their things and you learn things that you never knew during their life. I didn't know I was named after my great grandmother. Nobody spoke of her.
Oh,
Nobody spoke of her because she had been institutionalized after her husband died. And she was an immigrant from Sweden and did not speak English. And her husband died in an industrial accident, and she was left with 5 children and devastated. Had never worked, could not speak English, and was just crushed. So they put her in an institution, and nobody spoke of her ever again. And I had never been told any of that information, never heard any of those stories. But then in digging deeper, we learned a lot more about the family, things that people just hid, they just didn't talk about because they were too painful. But in this community, we talk about it because we know the journey is painful and we don't want people to be left with questions or regrets.
we know
We
there
know.
are many that do not open up
Mhm.
and share their life. And we respect that also
Mhm.
because within each of us is a desire to just be at peace
Yeah.
and continue this journey in our fashion, whatever that may be.
Mhm.
Some of us are out there and flounce everything to the public. That's a nod to a friend of ours. and and we don't care because we're living out loud in our own way. And for those that choose not to do that, that way of living out loud, we respect that also. Because for many, just surviving the day is an action, is an act of rebellion, an
Absolutely.
act of resentment. And for those of us that have the wherewithal to live out loud, louder than others, we honor them by living as best we can and by squeezing every moment uh, of every day as hard as we can.
We also honor them by allowing them to make their own choices and honor those choices and respect those choices and not question those choices too.
I
Sometimes it's a
believe,
hard pill, but
yeah, it is. And we feel for them and we cry for them. We cry for ourselves. Um, and it's heartwarming how much and how hard this community loves of one another.
yeah,
And the ability for some of us to express ourselves through a variety of mediums with respect to art is an example for others on how ALS or any terminal condition is not the end of living. It is the beginning of our individual ability to choose to participate in our lives
Mhm.
in any way that we choose. On this uh, Artistry of ALS presentation, the audience will witness a variety of mediums, and each one should be appreciated for the monumental feat that each one is to be able to paint using brush strokes while controlling a mouse, a eye gaze mouse, a brush with your mouth, painting with your toes, writing words that flow like tears of catharsis and develop messages that are empowering and elicit emotions for each reader, for each viewer. That is the strength of art in any form because it targets the individual perception and elicits a one of kind response from each person that is witnessing that creation, whether it be visual, spoken word, written word, song, melody, a photograph, any impression that the artist is able to make is an impression that is indelible in the soul and the heart of the observer. And that is the beauty of art in every shape and form, is that it's, it's like a branding on the soul, heart, and mind. And that brand is unique. One to the artist and two to the observer, because no experience is alike between individuals. And you never know who you're going to strike a chord with. Either someone is being seen, understood, or heard for the very first time. And that may be the difference between being forgotten and leaving a legacy, whatever it may be.
Or even just making the difference in one person's life.
Yeah.
You never know, like you said, who you're going to strike a chord with, and you never know what that impression is going to do to change that person's life. Or even if it's just that moment, maybe it's not a life-changing thing. Maybe it's something so small, but it made a difference that day. So I'm always impressed when I look at the art show and the things that have been submitted, and always struck by the people. I never considered myself an artist. I don't know that my stuff is good enough to be in the show. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, if you invoked a feeling in another person, if you were able to express a feeling that you had, if you got a sense of satisfaction from the work that you did, that's art. That's all it's meant to do. So you're absolutely an artist. Um, Juan Escalera with his AI art. It takes, you know, because you're very good with AI, it takes skill to put in the proper commands to get the results out that you're seeking. I try to use AI and it comes up with 12 fingers. It doesn't, it's not what I was looking for. And the more I try, the harder, the deeper I go, I end up with results that were nowhere near my original idea and I end up scrapping it all. But he can, submit an idea and hone it to be exactly what he envisioned in his mind's eye and have it come out. And, that is an art.
And for anyone that believes that creating, utilizing AI or technology is not creating, they haven't really tried to
Hmm.
use technology
Hmm.
to create what they envision because it does take skill and understanding of your own vision to make to help technology realize what you're trying to create
Hmm.
and coming up with anything that's close to what you envision as a creator. So technology is a huge aspect of what helps us living with ALS.
Not
And
just for the
those
purpose of art, but in all kinds of adaptations.
and the mental health aspect is invaluable. I have to say that if I did not spew the thoughts and words that are in my mind, I would lose my mind
Mhm.
because all the darkness would be locked away. Not only that, but the dark humor would be destructive because let's admit that we often have internal dialogues or conversations with ourselves
Mhm.
that if the public were to be aware of those,
They'd be worried.
we
They'd be
would
really
be
worried.
on, we would be on the list somewhere. But being able to form and create something comprehensible from our thoughts and our emotions is a mental sculpting in a way. And so, in a word, in some fashion, we are all artists of our own gallery,
Mhm.
whether it may be words, images, um, sounds, thoughts, etc. Um, everyone has the capacity to create. It's being willing to share it
Right,
with the public
right.
and being strong enough to withstand, shall we call it, constructive criticism.
Or even just the exposure.
Yeah,
It leaves one feeling very vulnerable when you expose yourself in that way. And the anxiety that can be created when you don't know how you're going to be received can be crippling. So, um, I think it's a very brave thing for people to put themselves out there, whether it be with their writing, or with their art, or whatever form their art falls into. Um, it's an act of love. It's an act of bravery. I think it's something everybody should, um, experience at least one time in their life. What it feels like to be accepted unconditionally by people when they put themselves out there.
That's a good way of putting it. Beautiful.
Everybody should have that feeling of acceptance. So, how do you feel about let's take a look at some of your art and let's discuss kind of what it means to you and so tell us a little bit about this.
This was inspired by a flight and travel. Uh, I was on a airplane and I could not see the horizon through the window because of my seat. I'm typically in the aisle seat. And it made me think of my furthest eating in an airplane is always by the window. But now I'm not able to sit them because it's easier to move me in the aisle seat. And so I thought of the airplane as a vehicle approaching the horizon. And the words took a while to put together with poetry. You're not always trying to rhyme, which is an illusion for individuals that try to create poetry. It's really just a matter of crafting a story with words that elicit an image, a feeling, or a thought, and sometimes even hope. Of this, the, the line that stands out to me the most is propelling us to meet the moment.
Mhm.
That's what life does. It never stops. It never takes a moment to pause. It's always moving forward. So in essence, life itself is propelling us to each moment.
I totally have been focused on that particular phrase myself as well. But if I think about this in the context of our lives, we're constantly being propelled to meet a moment. And are we prepared to meet that moment? That is the question. Um,
And the issue is that whether you're prepared or not, that moment will arrive.
or resilient enough to withstand whatever that moment brings. And in this journey, we have to be resilient in order to make it to the next moment. Your story, too, about being in the plane um, and not knowing what's ahead of you, not knowing what you can possibly dream for. But here you are, you're on a journey. Not sure where your plane was going, but I'm imagining maybe to an advocacy event where you're about to make a difference in somebody else's life and maybe in the journey of other people, which is something that you never would have dreamed that you were doing. But here you are, present in that moment, making the impossible dream possible.
This one came about uh, after reading some on Instagram uh, moments uh, regarding Dr. Redlack and his campaign of teaching hope and how he believes that hope is not just a cosmetic but a treatment and with respect to being able to use hope as something to instill life and the desire to continue moving hope. And so from this, I developed the idea of hope being an individual, independent construct for each person. And what is hope? Hope is what you make of it. Hope is a combination of thoughts, feelings, and what's powerful about hope is that as a mental construct, it has the power to elicit resilience, strength, momentum. So, as a thought process, it is a powerful catalyst of energy in all forms. And so I thought of hope as being a process that we each take in creating our own hope. And that's pretty much how this one came about.
Really like the last sentence where it says hope, the construct of our mind spurred by fear, uncertainty, but built on faith and fueled by love. I can't think of any better explanation of hope than that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of the cornflowers that are in the background of the image?
Well, I quickly learned that in America, the sunflower is the symbol for ALS.
Mhm.
But globally, the cornflower is the symbol for ALS internationally. And the sunflower in the U.S. is associated with ALS because of the resilience and propensity for ALS patients to look to hope and to look for the light, much like a sunflower moves towards the sunlight throughout the day, representing the lifespan of anyone dealing with ALS, always looking.
Okay. Can you tell
Have some,
us
we're gonna
a
have
little bit about this poem called Knowing?
Let me see. Knowing came about from the thought of being self-aware of what is going to be our demise, knowing that ALS is going to take my life. And I illustrated the journey of ALS with metaphors on what it does to our body. Words elude me like fleeting whispers amidst the fact that ALS takes our ability to speak, and the storm is ALS embodied as ALS goes through the process of stealing everything that we believe we are.
I'm struck by the second paragraph where it talks about my thoughts careen from what was and what is and what will be. I mean, that is the journey. We're constantly thinking about what was, not knowing what's going to happen and having that fear, dealing with what is right in front of us at the moment. And it does batter us and it does make us ache. Um, That's the part of this piece that strikes me. Aware of time passing exponentially, my body unable to keep pace. We're
Yeah,
totally at the mercy of time. It does not slow down for anyone.
yeah, and I search for the words that represent more than just the word. They represent feelings, emotions, fears, and somehow they come together and gel into a cohesive message. I often don't know where they come from, but they do.
I think you and
And
I have the
then,
same style of, let me get this thought out and encapsulate it and, boom, here's this thing that I can now hold on to for the day. I do, I do have a similar style with my writing. I don't write, I write a long paragraph, but it's always encapsulated. This is a complete thought. It's not a part of a book. It's not a chapter. This is a complete piece in and of itself. And I think you do a lot of the same with your writing.
yeah, I think so.
Match made in heaven.
It came about from hearing individuals sharing about their broken body and how their hearts were aching for who they used to be. And then I got the idea of creating a message about how the broken body mirrors the broken heart of a caregiver.
Mhm.
And together they're on a journey where the broken body continues to shatter, and so does the heart of the loved one. And often the thoughts that connect the two individuals, the two hearts, the two souls are similar but independent of each other. So in a sense, they are clinging to each other and they collide. Um,
This one touches
uh,
me deeply. I mean, a couple truly becomes a dyad in a journey like this. They both exist together. They don't exist without one another. They collide and they both are broken in different ways. I used to think about, Larry was on a journey that I couldn't follow him on, but we were both on the same journey right there together with each other. Um, so this piece means a lot to me.
the one line that strikes me the most is the second to the last. As we struggle towards its precipice, we are conflicted. Why? Because we know the vantage point when we reach it will be splendid, but also our last. And that resonates with me because there is conflict in our relationships because the caregiver, the family, the loved ones don't want to see us go, but they also don't want us to linger in the suffering
That's
that
right.
is ALS.
That's right.
So it's a double-edged sword, relief and pain and grief all combined. and and in the end, we have to say goodbye.
Yep.
There is
Don't want
no
to,
other
but
way.
there's no choice. That is the one reality. That is going to happen to us all at some point.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the gifts that we get from this journey is that we don't know when, but we know what, and we know that it's coming, and we can prepare, and we can say the things that we want to say to those people that we love. We can make sure that they know how we feel, and they can do the same. And that is a blessing.
And here with you something very personal. What I get in return for what I share is priceless because I get comments like I never knew. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I I wasn't aware until someone reads something I've created and then they know. Whatever it is that they understood is different for each person, but something clicks and they become aware of an aspect of their loved one that they are losing or have lost. That is like a gift to them, and in return, it is a gift to me to know that I was will help someone get a glimpse once again behind the veil, because it is an enigma. It is cloaked in so many layers of pain and suffering that sometimes it takes someone else to pull back the curtain just to get a glimpse.
In our society, people don't want to see pain. They don't want to see struggle. They don't want to see suffering. But we have no choice in this journey but to show it because we're living it. And it has taught us that people suffer and pain is real and it normalizes it in a way. Um, Too many people want to shield us from our pain or shield us from our struggle, but they can't. And when they try to ask us to put it aside, it diminishes it and doesn't recognize how important that struggle is in our life. But those of us that are in this community have no problem sharing tears on a call. It's normal. Tears and pain are normal and they are valid and they simply demonstrate the love that you have and the love that you feel, the grief that we feel. You grieve hard, you loved hard. And to set that aside is to minimize that love, and we just can't do that.
I agree.
So, I haven't asked very structured questions of you today. You've managed to answer every single one of my questions without me even asking those questions in this interview. So, you've done a really great job with that. Is there something that if you were doing an interview with me, that you might ask me that I didn't ask you, or that you didn't get to elaborate on as you were answering my questions without me asking them?
I've done this to me before, and it's always a question that catches me off guard because uh, in the interview process, there's the interviewer and the interviewee. and to turn the table is a little unsettling. But if I think for a moment, I might ask, yes, the knowledge that you have gained through advocacy and engaging with the community change your perception of life in general with respect to relationships that you've had in the past and how you hope that the newfound knowledge will shape your relationships in the future because ALS and the community do something to individuals.
Yeah.
They reshape and reframe
Yep.
our way of thinking because the love, the suffering that we witness is unmatched.
Hmm.
And it really does tear away many of the preconceptions that we have. So again, reflecting on past relationships, knowing what you know now and what you've experienced, how do you think it will influence future relationships?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you that not only would it really, really impact future relationships, but it has impacted the past ones as well. Um, I myself am on a personal journey that previous friends cannot follow. They can't relate to. Um, I think I was incredibly judgmental of people and the way they lived and the way they behaved. And it was easy to be cavalier with other people's feelings. And that's something that I can't do now. I don't judge people for who they are or what they think. Um, but I can't necessarily be complicit in things that I know are going to hurt someone. Um, we live in a really political time right now, and we're seeing unprecedented change in our country. And there are people who are cheering it and people who are celebrating it. And that's not something that I can do because pain is pain. I know pain intimately, and I never want to inflict it on anyone for any reason. Uh, I think I think being involved in this community has put a fire in my belly to help others. That wasn't necessarily there. I think it has seen that I must carve out that time to provide that help, whereas before it was always something I was going to do in the future. Someday I will do this. That day is today. That day is now. That day is every day for me. I have what I call my advocacy arm.
Yeah.
Every morning I wake up and I remember Linda and I am ALS and Juan and I have my FTD bracelets and Team Gleason and Hop on a Cure and ALS TDI, and that is my reminder every day that there's work to be done.
And there is. And for better or worse, this community that we belong to has indelibly changed the course of our life. And I believe it's for the better. I truly believe in the love of humanity and the willingness to share our lives so that others can experience love and joy unconditionally. And I believe that the world will right itself. It's not always pleasant or comfortable, but I have faith in the world
I do too.
that
And it's
will.
people. And it's people. Even those people that are right now, you know, they don't have the perspective that we have, but I think they will at some point gain that perspective and the pendulum will swing and we're going to be okay.
And that's what we can hope for.
Hmm.
Well, I want to thank you for your energy, your passion for this project. It brings to light so much love and encouragement within the community and to others to witness the ability of the human spirit to move forward and just share hope with everyone that witnesses the project.
Hmm. Like you, I'm humbled when somebody says thank you. Um, I don't think of it as my project. I think of it as your project. I don't think of it as something that highlights me. I think of it as something that highlights you and the rest of the community. And um, it is my honor to do it. And it certainly has um, helped me emotionally on my journey um, to be able to share this time with you and share the artwork of others. So thank you for being a part of it year over year. I certainly appreciate you, sir, and all of your guidance and all of your wisdom.
Thank you. And I know it's going to be a big success.